This also has to do with what you mentioned a few minutes ago about how Western civilization molded this in a different way than what it should be. The first thing that comes to my mind is when I was in Iraq a few months ago, and you're visiting all these families in Iraq, you're mingling with a lot of people. This confusion does not exist. Zero. It's not even a question. Everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing and as persecuted as they have been, and they're not living a life like, luxurious life like the West does. But this isn't even a topic of discussion, you know.
Yeah, so I guess my question is, and I want to answer your question too about what the consequences are, but why has the West gone this route? And what are the consequences? And I think one of the reasons is, for a long time now, we've been losing a sense of God, and now I think that we've basically kicked him out of society altogether. And the Second Vatican Council has this really nice line. I'm not going to say it, I'm not going to be able to quote it, but I'll paraphrase it. When we lose, when we lose a sense of God, we begin to lose a sense of man. So when we no longer have God as the kind of center and the pillar of our societal life, we begin to lose an understanding of who man is, because man is created in the image of God, and we see human beings properly only in light of having been created by him, right, as creatures of God and coming forth from him. So we begin to lose a sense of who we are since we've kicked God out of our society, and we don't have a theological sense anymore. And I think that just all that ends up doing is, making machines out of human beings, basically. And that's why we lose the female element, because the women are better at cultivating relationship, communication, sensitivity, and a nurturing spirit.
Compassion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
compassion.
yeah.
All the stuff that humanizes us. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, not to quote, not to give a plug for my own name here, but and Keto is made by the gods, and he starts off as a beast, and he's humanized by a woman, Shamhat. No, Shamhat is the goddess. Sorry, I forgot who the.
Saudi.
You're just making that up.
No, no, no. You said Saudi.
Sorry.
Saudi.
So he's humanized by a woman. And I think that's there in Mesopotamian mythology intentionally to say that this is the human element that's entered civilization. It's women that kind of go into the home, go into the house, and they make it a home. They make it a nurturing place. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess my question is if we've rejected that role of women in society, and in doing so, I think we've rejected a key element in our humanity that does humanize us. But why have we done that?
Yeah, what's the purpose of it? Like, why do they not, maybe I guess we could say that they don't really value motherhood and caring for the home, and why do some people value having a job more than that? Why has it reached that point?
I think one of the answers, one of probably various answers could be it's easier. It's much easier to have a 9 to 5 job, 10 to 6. You're living your life according to what you think is right. And they've painted the picture of motherhood and marriage in a very ugly manner to make it almost burdensome, which is so sad. The West has made marriage and family extremely, extremely burdensome. And what they say is, if you raise any objection towards my premise, then you're being insensitive.
Sexist or something.
Yeah. To my own feelings and my own sensitivity. No, this is natural. This delusion of thinking that marriage is not something that a man and a woman should strive for. And being a mom and being a father, fatherhood and motherhood is not something that we should strive for. It's a very natural understanding. So to answer your question, I think that's it. It just takes more work, and we're very scared to have more work. And we live in a society that's very lazy, especially how the way technology is advancing. We're just trying to find the most convenient things in our lives and push away the things that matter most. You could, sorry to cut you off, you could also see this with the plummeting rates of children, in families. Before you used to have an average of what? 5 children per family. Now you're lucky if you have 1 or 2.
Yeah. Do you guys think it's the case that they feel like they'll be looked down upon by society if they are just a mother, right? If they just focus on their kids and if they don't have a job, right?
That I've even heard that from the Chaldeans, which I was so sad when I heard that. I think most people today, especially where we're at in California, most people they have like it's very hard to make it without a 2 income structure. So even most women have to work just to kind of make ends meet. But Chaldeans are still good enough that they take care of their own kids. So like I know a lot of mothers that will work a job like either from home or whatever. They'll try to make it work. They'll work in order to provide extra income for the house because they need it, and they'll take care of their kids at the same time. And it's just like they're really having a hard time with that. But that's just coming out of necessity. It's nobody's fault. But then I know some people too that are stay-at-home moms, and their husbands make enough, thank God, that they can. The mother can stay at home with the kids, and they get criticized for it, And I think that's this poor
Never heard
mentality.
of that, by the way. That's
I've
crazy.
heard of it, yeah. That's that poor philosophy that has entered even a traditional kind of community like ours, and I think it is unfortunate. But it goes back to what I think is we've devalued human beings, and it's no longer. Like almost like to work for a company is more valuable than to form persons, which is a bizarre thing. It's new, I think. But that goes back, I think, to the theological sense, which is we no longer see human beings as creatures of God and images of God that are given their due respect.
And again, it's harder to form human beings.
Oh, it's way
I mean, look at it in a sort of Christological sense. Jesus was surrounded for 3 years of his ministry around the closest men to him, and even when they were, long into the ministry with him, he had to explain to them that Lazarus was dead. You know,
Yeah.
you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
He has fallen asleep. Jesus is being very poetic. They're still not understanding a lot of things. Then he's like, guys, Lazarus is dead. Let me just put it plainly. Imagine how much forming he was still doing, and this is a son of God, and
The most honest men that I know, married with kids and stuff, the most honest men that I know will say, I work, this 40-hour-a-week job, whatever it is, I work so that I can provide my wife with the space to form our children. And then I come home and I help her out. But like, that's the most important thing. And they'll say, I could never do that. Like, it's way easier for me to leave the house, go sit at my desk job or do whatever I got to do, and provide for my family in order to raise this nest, right?
So connecting what you just reflected on with what Harrison was saying, like Father Simon pointed out, he didn't say that all these female graduates must go out and just seek to be mothers and wives and devoted to fashioning perfect households or something like that. He was just talking about the dignity and honor that lies in that kind of vocation. And by the way, he was, in other parts of the transcript of the speech, he couldn't stop praising his wife for all of the good things in his life and all of the good things about himself. And that's rare. It's rare to find a husband talking about his wife like that, and I really respect him for doing that. And all of us I think all of us that are sitting here and people that are watching or listening, based on observation, starting with our own mothers and then mothers that we know in the community or wives that we know in the community, look at the results of what happens when a woman really pursues that vocation and makes it her own and nurtures it and devotes herself to it. Being a mother or a wife, look at the results. Our moms produced priests out of their household. And there's numerous fruits that we can speak of in our community because of moms and wives that followed that kind of pattern, that took that vocation of motherhood and being a wife and really understood the fact that this vocation actually completes us. It's not about whether I should be more concerned with a career or other goals that I want to achieve in my life. I think the thing that we really miss out on is, and I don't know if people want to hear this or not, but if you're talking about human nature and you admit that there is such a thing as human nature and things that hurt human nature and things that benefit human nature, it is objectively better to do all you can as a mother and as a wife to be a good mother and a good wife. And the same goes for men as in their vocation as husbands and fathers. It's objectively better to be a good husband or a good wife versus a good employee or a good professional in whatever field you want to select.
I want to sort of build on that nuance of the husband as well, because it's his duty first to navigate this family and orient this understanding of motherhood to the best of his ability, you know, because if you have a husband that wants all of these things from his wife, he wants them to be a good mother, but he treats her like an employee. He wants her to be a good wife, but he treats her as a servant. I mean, he's missing the mark too. And I could tell you, sometimes I've seen wives become rebellious to this and say, no, now I want a job, you know, because I am being devalued. No one appreciates what I'm supposed to be doing. And then you have this tension that's not supposed to be there, you know. So it's on him too to navigate that, and his wife and his children.
And it could be a misunderstanding of like St. Paul's words in Ephesians when he says, wives, be subject to your husbands, right? A lot of the time, husbands will take that verse out of context and just say, the Bible says you have to be subject to me, and that's it, right?
Old Chaldean guys, they love
without
that.
reading on, they don't read on. And it says, wives, be subject to your husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, and gave himself up for her, right? So in speaking about that, St. Paul is telling husbands, you're not like an authority figure to go and lay down the law in your house necessarily, right? You're the one that has to lead in sacrifice and in humbling yourself, like how Jesus did for his bride, the church. And in doing so, then you're going to be setting the example of sacrifice for the wife and the kids as well. And then you're going to be bringing Christ into the home.
Exactly. What does it mean to be a husband in the Christian model of marriage? It means you have to accept the role of Christ as he gave himself to his bride, the church, which means to be a husband in the Christian model of marriage, be ready to die for your family, which is a radical thing to ask for.
Much more than just making money and providing for them, but actually being Christ for them, being the first one. Actually, the father and the mother are the first teachers, are the first priests of the home, the first ones that introduce the kids to Jesus, and they have to do that by their example, by the love that they have for one another as a husband and a wife, modeling that of Christ in the church, and then showing that to their kids.
There's a nice analogy about that, and I think you could apply this to any vocation. But the analogy of a father that, like you said, has to die to himself for his family. It's as if he has, because when that happens, what essentially happens, you're being stretched, you know. There's a lot of discomforts, there's a lot of agony in it, dying to yourself, you know, and your wants and your needs. But it's like a father who has his arms stretched into heaven and his legs still on earth for his family to walk, have that bridge to get to heaven. And sometimes it hurts to be stepped on, you know, but it's your duty to do that, to be that bridge for them, to make it to heaven. That should be a husband and a wife's first priority, is that how can I make sure my husband and family is going to heaven, and vice versa.
Yeah, we neglect the small stuff, you know, in order to, like, what are the things that get us to heaven? So I don't want to like change the topic like radically here, but
No, please.
What are the things that get us to heaven? It's all the small stuff that we do with love. I mean, it was Mother Teresa, I think, is the one that said it, right?
Go home and love, yeah.
Do small things with great love.
Yeah, and
Right.
then she said, like, when someone asked her, how can I have an impact for peace in the world? She said, go home and love your family.
Yes, I love that. So that's all. Serve the people that God wants you to serve, that God put in your life in order to serve according to your vocation. If you're a husband, your wife and your kids. If you're a wife, then your husband and your kids, et cetera, right? Closest to home, basically. You know, stick closest to home. Those are the people that you're called to serve. Not to go and do big, great things. You know, there's a song, Go and Make a Difference, that they play at.
You're so cultured.
I hate that song. You know, I hate that song because it's not godly at all. It's totally worldly.
What's wrong with making a difference?
Go and make a difference. The presumption is go and make a difference by creating this amazing product that's going to, I don't know, cure cancer or something like that. Nothing wrong with curing cancer. Okay.
Well, well, you just got me to think about something about from that Mother Teresa quote. If you're paying attention, for example, to your venial sins more than your mortal sins, I think things start to solve themselves. So it does make sense, because sometimes all we do is focus on the huge mortal sins, which we should, and neglect the venial sins. Oh, it's small, I just lied. I just, had this thought or whatever, did this. It's fine. No, that's kind of backwards. Mother Teresa, I think, in that same speech, I think it was from a speech, she also mentioned Thanksgiving, how you should thank God for the smaller things first, because it's much easier to thank Him for the bigger things.
And going back to the topic of like a homemaker, right? Teresa of Avila has this really nice quote where she says, God moves among the pots and pans. And the idea, I think, is that when you're washing the dishes so that you can provide for your family clean plates that they can eat on, that's where you find God, in these really small things that people overlook and that don't pay any attention to and that the world doesn't give any value to. But that's where all the spiritual value really is, from God's perspective. And those are the salvific acts. Like, how are you saved? Wash the dishes, How are you saved? Get up in the morning if you're, whatever, you're a worker, get up in the morning and go to work, get there on time, not so that you can impress your boss, but so that you can serve your wife and your children.